This is one of those stories that's just as dark as it is glittering. We're going to dive into the Getty Dynasty and really look at the chillingly high price of all that gold. So, at the center of it all is one man, J. Paul Getty. And you have to understand, at his peak, he wasn't just another rich guy. He was the wealthiest private citizen on the entire planet. We're talking about a level of wealth that's hard to even imagine. But this story, it's not really about the money itself. It's about what happens when that money collides with something that's supposed to be priceless, your family. Because in 1973, his grandson was kidnapped. And his response? It just sent shockwaves around the globe. He flat out refused to pay the ransom. So that begs the question, right? Why on earth would the richest man in the world treat his own grandson's life like it was just another business negotiation? Yeah, this is so much more than a crime story. It's really a look at this huge paradox of a man who had literally everything, but seemed to value almost nothing. It's a story of oil, of incredible power, and a deep, deep loneliness that all the money in the world just couldn't touch. So you have to wonder, how does one person get that powerful in the first place? Well, it all started with this single, all-consuming obsession, oil. And we're about to see how that drive didn't just change the world, it completely forged the man he became. Now, John Paul Getty was born into money, sure, but he wasn't the type to just sit on an inheritance. Oh no, he was driven. In the 1940s, he made this unbelievably bold gamble on Middle Eastern oil at a time when pretty much everyone else was too scared to. And that bet, it paid off big time. By the 50s, he'd built this massive global empire. For him, oil wasn't just a commodity, it was basically his religion. So what does that kind of extreme wealth actually do to a person's soul? Well, Getty built this fortress of money all around him, but it turns out inside those walls there was this profound emptiness, a real poverty of human connection. Just to give you some perspective, his peak fortune would be worth around $25 billion today. I mean, that is a number so big, it's almost meaningless. He could afford anything he could possibly dream of, and yet, this is how he lived. This one detail tells you pretty much everything. He was so terrified of people taking advantage of him, so protective of every single cent, that he actually installed a coin-operated payphone in his own mansion for his guests. Think about that. His wealth didn't make him generous, it made him deeply paranoid. And that paranoia, it just seeped into every corner of his life. He had what you can only really call a transactional worldview. He went through 5 marriages, was estranged from most of his own kids. To Getty, people weren't loved ones. They were assets on a balance sheet or liabilities you had to manage. Everything and everyone had a price tag. And that entire philosophy, that cold, calculated way of seeing the world, was about to face the ultimate test. This is the event that would seal his legacy, a moment when a human life was treated like just another deal on the table. Okay, so here's how it happened. July 1973. His grandson, John Paul Getty III, he's only 16 years old, is literally snatched off the streets in Rome. The kidnappers, an Italian crime syndicate, demand a whopping $17 million. And Getty's immediate public response? A hard, unequivocal no. His logic, at least in his own mind, was cold but flawless. He just argued that if he paid this one ransom, it would put a target on the back of all his other grandchildren. He wasn't seeing it as a family crisis. He saw it as a security threat to his assets. So for 5 agonizing months, Getty didn't budge, while his grandson's parents were just begging him to do something. The kidnappers, well, they started to lose their patience. And then, a small package was delivered to a newspaper office in Rome. Inside was a lock of the boy's hair and his severed right ear. It was a horrifying, brutal message. We are not bluffing. The public outrage was immense, and the pressure on Getty finally became too much to ignore. He was forced to the negotiating table. But even then, he didn't just pay. And this right here, this is his mindset in a nutshell. He negotiated the ransom down to about $3 million. Okay, then he personally paid $2.2 million of it because that was the absolute maximum amount he could write off on his taxes. The other $800,000, he loaned it to his own son at 4% interest. I mean, can you believe it? He made his son go into debt to save his own child's life. His grandson was eventually released, but the story is far from over. Now we have to look at the real legacy of that decision, the devastating human cost of a fortune that was so fiercely protected. And this is the whole tragic story right here, in this one stark contrast. On the one hand, you have the Getty fortune. It didn't just survive, it thrived. It's the reason we have the world-famous Getty Museum, countless charities. It's a massive legacy of art and culture. But on the other hand, you have the Getty family. They did not survive. John Paul Getty III never, ever recovered. He spent years battling addiction and trauma until a stroke left him paralyzed for the rest of his life. The money was saved, but the family was absolutely lost. You know, J. Paul Getty was a genius at accumulating things. He understood oil, he understood risk, he understood finance better than almost anyone who's ever lived. But his entire life story is just this chilling, unforgettable reminder of a simple truth. You can own everything this world has to offer and still be utterly, completely alone. And that really just leaves us with one final big question to chew on. The Getty Dynasty forces us to ask not just what wealth can buy you, but what it can cost you. What really is the true price of wealth?